Welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. You found us. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We're here to be with you along your journey and to share our experiences in RC aviation. If you have any questions, thoughts, or want to share a flight story, hit us up at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Now, buckle in. Let's take off. Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 19, a whole year. Matthew, we've been doing this for a year now. Right on, I think.
Heck yeah. It's been awesome.
It has been a journey, for sure. So this episode, we're wanting to talk about basically what the last year has been for us in the hobby and as a podcast. And just kind of briefly where we want to go from here. So before we get into all that, I don't have any flight stories, to be honest with you.
You've been
last
busy
2 weeks
with your house, right? A little bit. Okay, like that's been part of what's been distracting you.
A little bit. It's just been busy the last 2 weeks. So yeah, I don't really have anything flown or built. I could have gone flying, but so 2 Saturdays ago, we're recording on a Monday night, but 2 Saturdays ago, I could have gone flying, but it was too windy, because that was actually going to be the weekend, I think, that I went up to your place.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was crazy windy that afternoon. I'm glad. Like, I'm not glad we didn't get together, but at the same point, it would have been a complete wash with regards to airplanes and flying and fun that way.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I could have gone out on my own and flown, and it just ended up being too windy. And I said, I've got the old fogey, and it'll get picked up and carried. So I didn't end up going. And you fly it like a sloper at that point. I have flown it in high winds. And
it's a challenge, isn't it?
Well, it'll fly fine once you get up there. Just it'll fly away from you really fast and really fine, and you'll spend forever trying to get it back. So that
that's true.
No. And then this past Saturday, the weather was just it was raining, it was nasty, so I didn't get out. But what about you?
Okay. I did a number of kind of different things. I think I talked about putting together the 250 gram Outlaw, which is it was kind of roughed out by different gentlemen on YouTube, and I looked at it, I said, I think we could do that. And I said I had a stabilization unit in there, and I couldn't figure out how to get that working, but I really did want to see like how this plane flies. So I took it out and I put it with a really heavy battery. So I put a 1500 milliamp battery, where to be 250 grams, I needed the 550 gram 3-cell. So I kept it 3-cell, but I like tripled the battery weight. And I took that and I flew it. There was a bunch of people at the field, and it was honestly very end of the day. And I was really surprised, because usually when I go, it's 30 minutes before dusk, and everybody's already packed up, and they're just kind of like, as I'm rolling in, they're like, oh, well, good to see you. Good luck flying, But this time, everybody was still there. They were all kind of just shooting the breeze and enjoying being out at the field, because it was a really nice day. And so I put it in the air, and I, got it going, and I flew it around. And I'll tell you what, on 3-cell, it had plenty of lift. It's I think it's a full width of foam board, so it's 30 inches. And I think the chord is 6 2/3 of an inch. And I think the overall length is like 18 inches.
Okay.
So it's like 18 by 30 inches roughly for the size. And it weighs 250 grams when it's got the right battery. And I flew it really heavy. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 325 or almost 350 grams. So almost like an extra 100 grams, which that's 50% extra weight.
Yeah.
Yep. And it flew awesome. Like, it flew great. The only thing I think would be the detriment to having a heavy battery is when you hit the elevator hard and it starts doing a loop and you're getting high G's, that battery puts a lot of strain on the wing. And the way the wing was designed was that to save as much weight as you can, you kind of cut out that middle section of the second layer of the KFM wing.
Okay.
So instead of having a continuous strip as the upper layer, you have a strip on the right and a strip on the left and a fuselage in the middle. But the only thing that's in the fuselage is a single layer of foam board. And that is doing the work of resisting the loading on the wing, for as far as bending.
Okay, so
bending
you're
the
not.
wing.
The wing is not 2 layers going across top of the fuselage.
No, it's just one with two layers on each wing.
Okay,
For the
I got you
step.
now.
Yep. And again, I didn't do any shaping to the wing or anything. It's like a brick, like granted, a very slim brick, but it's like a brick going through the air. There's no real aerodynamics to it or anything. And I've literally got a chunk of battery stuck on the bottom of this thing. So, I mean, but it flew great. People are like, man, that thing moves. And it goes pretty fast and it's very maneuverable. I think the hardest part about it is that when it's going away from you, it's literally a line. And that's pretty much all you can see.
Oh, yeah, because you've got no height to that wing.
Right. There's no profile at all. There's no depth to it. So it's kind of hard to see. And I didn't do anything as far as markings or anything. I was like, I just got to go see how this flies. And then I went back when I flew that battery, did pretty good. And I did notice that there were slight creases at the fuselage. So actually, when it was flying, it was slightly dihedral, which ended up being pretty helpful and pretty good. But that also meant that the wing was weak. So if I started doing some aggressive loops, I knew I could potentially have a complete failure or at least a partial failure, and it would have been interesting to bring back. So what do? I say, I've got a 2200 milliamp battery, which is even heavier. Let's slap that puppy on and see how that flies. And of course, so it's every turn is even worse. Like if I'm making a high G turn, that weight's even more, and the effect on the already weakened wing is going to be pretty bad. So there was a spot where I kept doing, the elevator was going up and down. I think I was trying to reset up the CG. I didn't adjust for putting in the new weight. I think I checked the balance roughly. I don't have a CG mark on it or anything, so I didn't have anything exact. So I just like, that's about right. And then I chucked it in the air, and it flew. But to get the fine trim right, I was kind of adjusting the elevator and kind of moving it back and forth until it got enough height. And so it's fluttering up and down like a butterfly almost with the wings as I'm going from go down, go up, go down, go up, go down, with the elevator. So, but
I'm a leaf on the wind.
Exactly. So yeah, I flew it around. I had a good time, and it was it survived the experience. But it was starting to show some fatigue in the fuselage where the battery was attached to. I think I had actually kind of partially ripped one of the pieces. The fuselage was not glued on. It was literally just sort of slid on from the front. And because of some of the actions, it had kind of bent one bottom of the fuselage, and it was kind of ended up being a little loose. There was FPV on it, but the FPV recording footage was corrupted, which really stinks.
Oh man.
Yeah. But I flew at line of sight, and anyway, had a great time. So I'm looking forward to either rebuilding another one, because that was 3/4 of a sheet of foam board, and it was so quick and easy to do. So I'll be either rebuilding that maybe in the next in the build challenge coming up here, or I'll just rebuild it because it's so quick and easy.
Wait,
and then make a couple of improvements.
Did you crash it, or there's enough structural weakness that
there was enough structural weakness? Yeah, there's enough structural weakness that when the battery, because that's hanging on the bottom of the pod, that hit the grass and just yoinked the fuselage around and basically cracked off the bottom half of the fuse. So, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. It's a small piece of foam that I can just roll back up and put on another one, really.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be easy to do. That was a lot of fun. So I did that. I also was kind of playing around with my Tina Whoop. I flew it around the backyard a little bit, and I flew it out at the field one night. And so I decided I'm going to fly it in the goggles, which is good. And I was using the quantum goggles, and I just said, I'm going to fly out as far as is reasonable. And when it starts getting sketchy, I'm going to like kind of pitch it up and maybe get a little bit more altitude so that maybe the signal strengthens. And so I went all the way down the road, which is pretty much to the one tree line. I think that's also, again, like a quarter of a mile or so, maybe.
Okay.
And then it started to lose signal, and I popped it up and I turned it as best I could. I kept getting intermittent signal and black screen, and then fuzz, and then black screen, and then I was like, I don't know what the heck's going on. So I just cut the motor because I knew it was near the road. At least I can go find it there. And sure enough, I was able to get out there, and I was like kind of gunning the motors a little bit to kind of hear it, so I knew where to roughly look, and I recovered it pretty quickly. And then I think one last thing before I just talk about quickly about the builds that I've been working on. I did take the Goblin out one night when it was right before dusk. I was like, I just want to do this really quick. My mother was here. She's kind of watching the kids. So I'm like, let me go do this. And as I do it, I don't know. It was just one of those nights where I should have packed it up the first toss and just went home.
Had those days.
Yep. I think we all have. So I tossed it, and I might as well have been just literally throwing it into the dirt about like 10 feet in front of me. I'm like, that's not right. Like all the surface, I double checked, all the surfaces are working right. The balance was in the right spot. The video, I saw the video. I mean, everything was good. Like, shoot. So I pick it up, I double check everything again, and I throw it again. And again, I'm doing this. I already have the goggles on because it's the Goblin. Like, it flies great.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be any problems. I was wrong. So it tanked once again into the ground. Just as hard as the first one, just a little bit further out. I was like, oh no. So then that had also skid along the ground and broke the prop.
Nice.
Right. So I'm thinking, what should I do now? But grab another prop. Not the original
obviously
one,
there's
but
nothing
grab
wrong.
a different one and put on one of those 5-bladed propellers. Oh, and because they're only going the one direction and not the other, they're a reverse prop. I'll just switch the wires. It'll be totally fine. I throw it in the air, and it does fly around a little bit. And then the engine completely cuts out. I'm like, oh, what the heck is that? So I don't have any real control, but I do bring it to the ground. Meanwhile, it's getting dusk. Like, the sun is already at the horizon, if not a little bit below it. The sky's starting to darken. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. So I go get it, and I realize, I'm like, oh, the motor wires just pulled out. They literally disconnected. That's why the motor stopped. I'm like, okay, cool. So the propeller's good. The motor's good. The connection, the ESC is good.
Pause that for a second. And I don't know if this is relevant, but it seems to me if a wire's pulling loose, there's a problem. Like the wire's under pressure. So is that where this is going, or am I completely off base here?
I don't know. It's a pusher prop. So it's only pushing the motor into the craft.
No, okay, yeah.
Right. So I mean, like, I'm thinking, like, okay, well, it may be maybe I caught the ESC on a piece of foam as I was pushing it in, and rather than it kind of rotated the ESC and thereby pulling the wires away from the motor, maybe. I don't know. Like, I'll just plug it back in, everything will be fine. So I take it and I throw it and I fly it for like, I don't know, 5 seconds. And I bring it down, like, just off field, down a little ways, but still pretty close. And I realized, like, something's not right. Like, that first time I had flown it with the new propeller, it flew around, but it was doing some weird tendencies, which is weird for the Goblin because it generally flies pretty straight and true. So I had to trim a bunch more than I expected, and it really just wasn't flying right. And then it just started doing weird stuff. I was like, crud. And again, the motor went, so that didn't help. Plugged it back in. I threw it again, and it was also doing weird tendencies. So I said, you know what? I'm cutting the motor. I'm going to let it let it just come down and we'll be fine. So I do just that. Then I'm packing everything up and I'm going into my car and putting everything away. Everything's away. And I go to grab my phone. Wait, where's my phone?
Where is your phone?
Where's my phone? Checking all the 16 billion pockets. I'm like, no, I put it in the breast pocket up top on the outside, which is sort of shallow. And it's also stuffed full of COVID-19 masks, which makes it even more shallow. So apparently, one of the times I grabbed the plane, it dumped out. One of the times was pretty far into the field. Not terribly much, but far enough where it might be hard to find again. And another one was pretty near the edge, but it was down a little ways. I figured if I just go back and forth, I should be able to find it if it's over there. So I do that, and I'm looking, I'm like, meanwhile, the sun is down, and, there's a, guy who came out because I had a flashlight. He's like, "Are you okay, man?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just looking for part.
Looking for my phone."
Yeah. And he's like, sorry, man." And I'm like, "Yeah, see you later." So he takes off. And he's, again,
should have asked him to call it.
I know. Well, that's hindsight. Yeah, I should have. And I promise you, for the next 45 minutes after, and then I realized, I'm like, okay, I'm not finding it. And the whole time I'm looking, I'm calling out like, "Okay, Google, where's home?" Or something. Like, hopefully it'll respond, I'm like, how am I going to get this? Like, and then I thought, oh no. And I thought, well, I don't know. Well, let's see. You know what? I know. I'll go home. I'll drop everything off. I'll get my work phone and I'll call it while I'm out in the field. It'll be great. I'll find it right away and it'll be awesome. So I get out there. I got the new, go back, get the thing, come back. I've got my work phone. I'm calling my personal cell phone on my work phone, which is fine. And it goes right to voicemail.
Oh, no.
Yeah. You know why? Because I barely have reception at field on a good day. When the phone is dropped into the dirt, it definitely has no reception, is what I found out. So needless to say, I take the next 45 minutes going back and forth in the dark with two flashlights. I have one flashlight that has like this yellow cob that I put in my car, like on the hood. It just kind of magnets on there and it just illuminates everything. I've got this other flashlight that's literally losing battery as I'm using it. Like, then I end up using the cell phone for the other battery. I've got two of them in each hand, like two headlights pointed down, and I'm literally just trekking back and forth for 45 minutes through the very damp, what is that? I get planted with grass, thankfully, because if it was planted with tobacco, I would have been lost. There would have been no way.
Yeah.
No way. So I traipse back and forth for 45 minutes. Feet are soaked. Shoes, socks, bottom of the whole pants, just everything is just miserably soaked. It's cold. But I go out I'm about to give up and I'm like, you know what? This was where it kind of went deep. Let me just kind of go back and forth over this and just go at least to the hilltop. It's a part of the way in there. And sure enough, after about 5 minutes of that, I find the phone just sitting there. Face up, everything's cool. It's 95% charged. It would have been there for a while.
Yeah.
And this is like the next day, my mother was catching a flight to Connecticut to go back home. She's got a bunch of things to take care of when she gets home. So I'm sitting there going like, oh, geez, if I have to come out tomorrow, like I got to come out at the butt crack of dawn and I only have so much time I can spend. I'm like, oh, this is going to be worse. I'm like, I need to go look for this. So I've never had to look for a phone in a farmland, but I did. It was like a needle in a haystack at night in the dark. Both ways, uphill. But I did find it. And that, I'll tell you what, it's just one of those things. I'm like, I should have just, when the prop broke, went home. I should have just went home.
Jeez, man. And I'm glad you got your phone back.
Yeah, me too. That's the thing is this is a replacement phone I'd gotten like 2 or 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I can't do this.
So what ended up being the issue with the Goblin, or have you not determined that?
I'm not entirely sure. I've tested the motor. It seems to respond properly. I looked at the surfaces. They all seem to be where they're supposed to be. All I can think of is maybe one of the wires I guess maybe in moving it from, hanger in the one thing to the car, to the bag, to the thing, to the field, maybe one of the wires got a little bit more bent than it seems.
One of the control wires or push
Yeah.
rods?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I can think of is maybe it's that. But really, and that's the other thing is the core. There's like a tube or a C channel box that broke a couple times already from the first handful of flights. So I'm either gonna have to glue that up. That kind of came loose, and so I'm either gonna have to glue that up or I'm gonna have to rebuild the Goblin. And I'm not sure which to do. I'm thinking probably just rebuild the Goblin. As much as I love Toucan Sam because he makes me happy. Uh, maybe I'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, getting back to a presentable appearance and then hanging from your ceiling because he's still pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Toucan Sam's a lot of fun to see. Yeah, so I don't know. I'll probably, knowing me, I'll be stupid enough to put it back together and see if it flies until it doesn't, and then I'll have to rebuild a new one. But that shouldn't be a huge deal. The Edward RC foam board cutter has been somewhat successful.
Okay.
And so that's good. So I'm at the point where once I learn how to transfer PDF files and make them cut files, I'll be able to take any plane that isn't already turned into a cut file into something pretty quick without any effort on my part, which would be nice. Okay. And then I guess that kind of brings us up to this coming month is Buildworry, which is the build challenge I host in the FT forums, the flight test forums. And that's forums.flighttest.com. And you just look up Buildworry. It's the weirdest name. But it's 4 weeks long. So build 4 planes in 4 weeks. Good luck. I designed from some coding of some of our favorite people on our forums, on our Discord forum. They kept saying, "You're going to build a car, right? Like a flying car or something?" And so I thought about it. And I said, "You know what? That wouldn't be a bad idea. Let's see what I can do." So I found Fiddler's Green, who does paper models, and again doing that same kind of thing with the T-37, I think was it, where it's a paper craft thing, and you kind of take the rough design there because the skins are, tight. They're done well, and basically just transfer that into a thicker media. Anyway, so I took that into the CAD program that I have, and I started doing something up. And in short order, I had something ready to go. So then I used my projector because I didn't really want to print out 600 different things, and I wasn't ready to learn anything apparently. So I projected on the wall, and I traced it out, and it's cut out and ready to go. So that and a bunch of other planes that are probably going to be kits. And that's probably what I'm going to be doing for the next month, which is building the flying car design, testing it out. So you hear about that in a little bit, as well as different builds. So it's either going to be like Master Series Corsair, Master Series P38, which I heard is a bear, and that should be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to both of those. And I've got kits for those. I also got word from the Hangar RC that some of the stuff that I had ordered was on its way or should be on its way within about a week as he was pulling it together. So if they come in the middle, build line, I've got the kits. I was just really kind of waiting for the skins to come in. And that was basically waiting for the finalization of the T6 Texan design. And it looks like Sam has got that set the way he likes it. So he's sending those to me, and with all the stuff that's coming in there, I should have 2 Hangar RC designs that I might end up going for, because I've got the motor set up and ready. All I got to do is build those planes, throw the stuff in, and go. And yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I've been kind of like, can't wait for it to come in, like a little kid. It's ridiculous. It's fun though. That's part of what I love about the hobby here. It makes me feel like a little kid for a minute. Yeah, but that's it. I mean, that's what I've been up to in the hobby. And over the next couple weeks, you'll be hearing whoever's tuning in will be listening to Buildworry stuff, because that will take up every free moment I think I have.
Yeah.
It usually does.
Okay. And you had mentioned to me that during one of your later night building sessions, because you build and hang out in the Discord on the regular, that you and Battle Axe and Sundown have been talking, and a question came up about an ESC setting.
Oh, right. Yeah. So one of those guys had put together, I think it was Battle Axe had put together a hovercraft with, plastic, what are those? The skirt? Yeah, like a plastic skirt, and one motor pushing down and one motor pushing back with a servo kind of directing it. Pretty basic stuff. And so he was talking about that, and then Sundown 57 was like, oh yeah, I actually 3D designed one. I just print those out. My wife loves them. We when I go out to the field to fly planes, we bring that and she scoots it around the ground while I'm up in the air, and we all have a good time, which is pretty awesome actually. And one of the questions came up is like, hey, is there a way, because they're talking about fine tuning the controls for the thrust, the hover vector, the hover motor, and they're like, hey, is there a way to reverse that? So like we could do like a quick stop, like almost like a break. So it would pull the craft down to the ground as opposed to like pushing it up.
Okay, I'm finally understanding that question now.
Yeah. Sorry. So the question is, hey, like I've got a Simon K ESC, and is there a way to make it like bidirectional? So when you're thinking, like your 3D airplanes that do crazy acrobatics and stuff. Well, the quadcopter world has found that if you can do reversible, so basically it goes one direction at the top of your throttle and it goes the opposite direction at the bottom, and the middle of your neutral is 0. Right? You can do some crazy acrobatics. Right? Like you can do some crazy maneuvers that are just straight out impossible in any other way. So they found a way that with BL Heli 32 ESCs, that it's built into the programming. Like all you got to do is hook that thing up to a flight controller and bring the flight controller to your BL Heli app that's on your Chrome. I've got one in Chrome, and it allows you to, it's like a programming card basically, but it's a little bit more advanced, and it allows you more fine tuning of your ESC and getting data and things like that. So, but you can change, one of the things you can change, like we talked about in our episode, was all the braking stuff, but it also can change, is it one direction, is it reverse direction, or is it bidirectional? And now if you're a bush plane pilot, you want to have a reversible pitch, because you can't really change like how, but if you have a speed controller, electronic speed controller that can go bidirection, you effectively have a reverse pitch prop. So, which means like when you land, you can kick it in reverse and literally stop your plane dead.
Right.
And so the same idea, they were thinking about the same idea, like, oh, can I do this with my hovercraft? Right. And I was like, well, if you have a BL Heli 32, you can do it real easy, especially if you have a flight controller board, just kind of like an extra one. You just hook it up and do it. It takes a little bit, but at least once you've got it, now you can use it for your hovercraft. And they said, wow, dude, I've only got a Simon K. Which is the programming in the ESC. So like the software, it's like firmware really, but anyway. And so apparently, and we'll link a couple of the videos that show you exactly how to do it. But all it really is hooking up a way to program that ESC with a new firmware that allows the bidirectional. The ESC really doesn't care how it's sending all it's doing is controlling where the current's going down and when.
Right.
So if you change the programming to allow how that works out based on what your throttle is giving it, voila, you can do that kind of thing.
It changes the firing order on the 3 wires, so you're not having to go in and actually switch the wires. It kind of switches them itself.
Right. It switches the order which it fires it. So instead of going ABC, ABC, it goes CBA.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Now, is that supported on just some of the newer ESCs, or is that happen to be, say, backwards compatible?
Well, it's a matter
you
of...
may not know.
I don't. This is true. I don't really know. I know with a BL Heli, uh, BL Heli, if you can get it, the software to read your ESC, if it has that capability, it will give that as an option. Um, I know that Simon K, it's possible for most Simon K ESCs, and a lot of the cheaper stuff is set with, and it's handed to you with Simon K. Or if it isn't, you could probably flash Simon K to it, and then use this feature to make the adjustments. The details are best told by somebody else who has done it. I haven't. I just saw that it. I know it's possible, and I know that there's a couple tutorials. Again, I'm gonna link one for the Simon K, and he goes into detail as to specifically what software to grab. There's links, and he talks about what the limitations of that are. And then Josh Bardwell went over the BL Heli stuff and how you can do that with your quadcopters, which, while this isn't a quadcopter, the function's still the same.
Right. Okay.
I hope that helps somebody. I mean, or at least if you didn't know it was possible, now you know.
No, I mean, I guess if we ever build a plane that's a bit hot on the landings, that has landing gear, like
Right?
that would be an option.
Like like a bush plane.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to do our own stole contest.
That's true too.
Right? Good. Yeah, I don't mind. Look, I don't think that's a bad idea. As we look forward, maybe we should issue each other a challenge.
Yeah.
We'll think about that as we go forward here. Well, I guess so. What's that bring us to, listener? We had one. We have a listener comment. You want to talk about that? It was really just a feel good comment that we got on our Facebook. It was Jim O'Cam, and I hope I pronounced that right. And he said he's really enjoying listening to the podcast. Keep up the great work.
Well, thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. Not everybody is going to feel that way, I'm sure, but I'm glad that there are a bunch of you here who enjoy listening to us ramble on and on about the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that brings us to what? The main topic?
Yeah, and we're just kind of talking about what the last year's been, hobby and podcast.
Sometimes, you go into something and not really know where it's going to take you, how it's going to bring you, and if you're going to be able to stick with it. Especially this year. This year has been a doozy of a year, and for the whole world. But I think it's been interesting for the hobby because it seems like when you look back at the hobby over this past year, it's in some ways gotten a squirt of life into it, like an extra little bit of coffee to get it going faster.
People have been stuck at home a lot.
Exactly. And when they're stuck at home, they're like, well, we got to do something. I'm going to go crazy. And they're like, oh, I remember as a kid, I used to do, let me go to the hobby store and see if there's something fun. And they're like, oh, neat. I've always wanted to try out airplanes. Let me go give that a go. And I was, I've been talking to my local hobby store owner, and he's not the only person who's mentioned this same kind of thing. But yeah, there's a lot of people who've just been trying to get their hands on something to do while they're stuck at home, for the various, lockdown orders of COVID during this past year. And this hobby is one that people turn to.
Mm-hmm.
The problem has been, how in the world do you get enough material? Because actually, that's been the hard part. Is a lot of the supply lines have they've been slowed down, I think, is probably the best way to put it. Most of the companies are still designing and putting out product, like they're putting together product, but a lot of the complaints have been, it's been really hard to get the things people need.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I think some of it has to do with, as people's hours and, company owners are looking out for their employees and trying to find ways for them to produce a product without being in harm's way.
Right.
Some of the stuff is in, it's in a factory. You show up and you got to be next to somebody for 8 hours and be, doing stuff. So, putting together a plane or putting together packaging or getting this or that together. And so as the world kind of has figured out how to do that and be as safe as possible, a lot of the supply lines and a lot of the supplied materials have been not stopped, but they've been more limited because it's just there's not as many because they can't produce as many because they can't work as many straight hours as they used to.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty interesting there. All right. So outside of COVID-19, I guess that kind of brings us to the other big piece of news throughout the whole year has been the FAA and the notice of proposed rulemaking and the comments and, the hobby kind of waiting to see what to do. I think that's actually been part of the slowdown as well. Because if you're a manufacturer and you don't know really what you can or can't do that'll be okay to sell, how much money do you really want to put into developing stuff that may not even be possible to sell in America or other places for that matter? So the FAA has been kind of a cloud that sort of followed us around throughout the hobby this year as well. And it turns out like that it wasn't as dark a cloud as we thought it might be. Because at the end of this year, thankfully, we also got some other news about what the final rule was going to be. Let's see. We also had basically a lot of, you saw us hibernate, right? For a couple of months.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that briefly. I know you and I were talking about before the show, and I don't mind saying it. We started at the beginning of the year, and we kind of released those first, like the introductions episode and then like episode 1 and 2, fairly quickly, and then things started slowing down, and some of that was just figuring out the timing and schedules to do this, and then COVID hit and we were stuck at home, and we had gotten to like episode 4, I think, and then there was like a big gap there. And you were patient and you were kind and you were gracious on the other end, saying, hey Joe, let's do this, like finish editing that episode so we can get we can get going again. And I was the one with the foot on the brakes because there was a drastic change in the sound on my end, coming from the early episodes into the mid episodes of what's out there now. So the episode 3, 4 to like the 5, 6 period, and that was I got a mic before I had been recording on an Xbox headset, and it just, while it worked, it bugged me, and it bugged me enough that I didn't want to keep putting that out there, and it was just rough. There were problems with it, and so it was once I got a mic and an audio interface and got all that hooked up, that's when I was like, okay, Matt, we're good to go. Like, let's get back into this thing. And since then we've been pretty staying on it, and I hate that I didn't do a lot of building during COVID. That was
we can talk about regrets about things we wish we had done. As a matter of fact, that's something I don't think I wrote down, but don't forget it because I do want to get to that. And I think you're right. Like that is one of those like, wow, we had like a golden opportunity. And we could have handled it differently. At the same point, maybe that's just what we needed to do, and that's okay. I know that while I was home, I was trying to, like, I'm used to being able to come up with an idea and by the afternoon have a printed plan ready to just throw down on some foam board that night and cut it out. Like, so by the next day, I'm already like building a new design, like coming up whatever I came up with. And that whole process had really, I don't know, it had been disrupted significantly. As I was trying to figure like, okay, well, how else do I get plans? Like at the time, my printer wasn't working right, so I couldn't just print a billion sheets. I couldn't use the large scale plotter because I wasn't at work.
Right.
And so what do I do? which actually led to one of the, because I had ideas, I had things I wanted to try out. I mean, my brain doesn't stop apparently,
Mm-hmm.
whether I like it or not. um. Anyway, so eventually I found my way through it, but that kind of halted a lot of the, I'll call it, not the RC hobby, because I still had some planes to build and try and things to fix, and I could have moved forward on some other aspects, but that definitely was a damper on my part. I love building. I love coming up with things and building them,
Right.
and that just it just was, all brakes were on, and we were just weren't going to go anywhere until I figured it out. So that doesn't help. It never helps. Um, but that's okay. I think it really taught. That's the other neat thing about, I think, this year. I hate to say neat, but I think all of us figured out different ways to do the things we like to do. You know, and managed to kind of work around in a better way or in a safer way for COVID-19. But like, we managed to work it through. And I think most people have kind of managed to find a way.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that this is actually kind of moving us into our next area that we're going to talk about. As
Hmm.
far as what have we as podcast done, but um, you know, before COVID hit, like when it was still kind of low on the radar, we didn't know it was going to be like this. Um, you had talk about things we had to figure out how to do the things we wanted to do. Like we or you started up the build parties in Discord, which is
Hmm.
where our Discord server came from. And since then, we've maybe not done as many as we wanted, but we have been continuing to do build parties. And
Hmm.
that's a different format, I think. That's I don't think it's going to be unique to the COVID period long term, but
No, but it sure
we
did go, oh, wow, this is an excellent way to continue this hobby and still be safe. Yeah, this is good. Even if we can't
yeah.
fly, we can at least build and build together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and I've enjoyed it because like there's nobody else in my area, like my immediate area. I know there's some
Hmm.
guys, you know, 30, 45 minutes away or such, that that are doing this, but there's nobody here in my
Right,
hometown, and certainly we wouldn't really be able to gather. So, that's been nice.
right. And I'm
Being able to
happy
do
for
that.
you to have that, really. Because, I mean, I guess thinking back to my experience, I have a flying field. And okay, I may not be like chummy chummy with everybody at the field, or most of the people at the field I might have met a couple times. But the fact is, I could go to a field and see what people are doing and see the kinds of different avenues people take with a hobby. And I knew that, like, you didn't have to be able to go do that with, I guess, except for me. Like, come visit me, and we might do some of that. Um, so it was a good way, I think, for me, and for you,
Hmm.
to be able to see, like, this is part of what the hobby is getting together and shooting the snot about what's going on with you, like, oh, what do you like about this? I mean, there's a lot of like comparison, like, hey, have you built that plane before? Have you ever tried that out? Oh man, that one's awesome. Or, well, that one's pretty cool, but it's real touchy. And honestly, I'd this other plane is kind of the same thing, but it works way better. And you're like, oh wow, cool. Like, not nobody was really disparaging to any one or the other, but it was very much like, these are the things to watch out. You make your call. Like, we're all different people, so go to it, man. And I think the whole thing, what I like about it is our community has been very supportive, and uh, I don't know. So I'm blanking on the words here. Maybe you can help me out.
Encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, that's it. Very encouraging, very positive, and very helpful. So
Hmm.
I'm very grateful for it. I'm so happy with the people that we've managed to get to know in this hobby through the podcast, and just in general. So
Yeah.
let's go back to things that happened this year. And our list isn't going to be expansive. I'm not like deep in the hobby. I don't know all the movers and shakers of the hobby or anything like that. Okay. Um, But I do know that, like, we talked to Sam Platt, right? The Hangar RC. To me, that was a whole new avenue. Like, I can go get a different kind of plan, a different kind of way of flying foam board from this guy. Like, I don't have to, it's not just, and I say just, but like Flight Test has plenty of options and the community has even more.
Right.
But it's nice to know that there's other people kind of paving a different path in the same snow, as it were, you know? So it was nice to see that. That was cool. And then Depron, somewhere mid-year, I see a bunch of posts from a guy who's saying, "Hey, I got Depron. Anybody want Depron?" And because I remember, like, about a year before that, I think, like, everybody's using, Depron is a common material used in this hobby. It's lightweight, it's flexible, you can mold it into shapes and things like that, and really put together some pretty awesome builds, awesome looking builds, right? And I was kind of like wanting to try it, but I was like, oh, geez, this is pretty rough. Like, I wish I could just go and check it out. And
right, because at the time you could only get it shipped from Europe because it wasn't here.
So, well, there was one supplier, and again, I don't think his prices were terrible, but his prices were for a giant box of it. And as a product I don't know anything about, I haven't tried, I don't know the merits of, and I'm not sure I like any better or worse than foam board that I can get down the street for $1. Yeah, I'm not looking to drop $120 on something I'm not sure I like. It's part of the reason why it took me forever to get in this hobby, you know? But anyway, so Depron came back to America. So apparently, and it was gone. Like, when I started to go, I think I'm finally got a couple bucks, I'm gonna risk it. I'll get this stuff and hopefully I'll like it. If not, maybe I can sell it to somebody, right? And I couldn't find it. It was nowhere. I'm like, where'd it go? And they're like, oh, it's over here in Europe. We got tons of it. And I'm like, yeah, well, it cost $120 in shipping just to get it here. And they're like, yeah, sorry. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. Like, well, darn, that sucks. And if you look like on RC groups or some of the other forums, like maybe RC Universe, like it's all over there. Like the build articles and build plans and things like that. Depron is very common as the material used for that, but it's back. So there's a supplier that said, hey, I'm going to do this. And he's managed to also find a way to box it up in, I'll call it smaller chunks, more affordable.
Right.
I think he managed to get a box down to about $45, and it's got enough sheets to build at least 2 or 3 planes, 2 or 3 Park Flyer planes, and probably one bigger size plane. And that's awesome. And I think he's actually been working to kind of maybe help improve the product if even possible. So, very approachable. It's good stuff. So it's back. That's news. That was news to me. I was very excited to hear it. There's also been,
because you called me and you were like, dude.
yeah. It was cool. And it's just one of those things where, I don't know, like there's so many different ways to do this. I'm always curious to see what are the benefits of each material, right? Each material has a strength and a weakness. And if you know what they are, you might be able to put together some pretty absolutely incredible stuff from mixing these things together, if you can. So, if you don't know that they're there, there's no way you're going to have that happen. So, we talked about the resurgence in the hobby. And also an interest in the brick and mortar stores. Because when everybody's like, oh, I wanted to get back in the hobby, where do I go? Oh, I'm going to go to the local hobby store and say, well, how do I do this? Now that I've got time. How do I get involved? And of course, they're trying their best to steer people in a direction that'll keep them in the hobby. So I'm excited to see that.
Speaking of, have you been in to see Alan Hayes lately?
Oh, baby. Yeah, man.
How's he doing?
It's actually probably been a month, but throughout the last couple months, I stop in about once a month or so. And we talk about this or that. I think last time I needed connectors for one of the builds, and I think I needed landing gear wheels.
Okay.
And I had no desire to wait a long time. So he had some of those, and the other half he said, I've ordered them and they are just not here yet.
Not here yet.
and it may be weeks. I don't know what to tell you because I haven't seen it come. But I promise you, if they're here, I'll sell them to you. So I appreciate, buddy. I said, don't worry about it. I understand. I'm just, and he says, and we talk about, and that's part of where I learned, like, no, he says, no, we're busy. Like, I have a harder time keeping things in stock than I do anything else. Like, I can't get restocked fast enough for what people want, And so I was like, that's awesome. Because no, we're doing really good. And it's been a big help that, the community itself has been very supportive. And it helps, and it doesn't hurt that we're expanding the base here. So I said, cool.
Right.
I know a bunch of, and I know this has kind of already started, but it seemed like there's been a resurgence almost in balsa. I think with the price of laser cutters coming down and the ability for everybody to kind of either print out their own plans or laser cut their own balsa plans. It seems like there are a handful of new balsa kit makers who are literally taking some of either their old designs or taking the old ones and improving them and making them more snap fit, for lack of a better way. So rather than sort of like butt your pieces together, put glue in, and you're good, like these interlock, and you don't need to pin them all together and hold them and cross your fingers that something doesn't happen. Like, no, you just put them together and you put the glue on and you're good. It seems like a smarter way to build. But there's a lot of new balsa kit makers. They're making some new planes, and they're maybe reissuing a lot of old favorites. And so they're kind of keeping the hobby, the part of the hobby, which I was kind of looking at, like, how many makers of balsa kits are there anymore? And I was looking at it going, like, I don't think there's many. And Alan was kind of saying the same thing. He's like, it's really just these two big guys, Gillows. I mean, you can find a lot of small kit makers, like individuals who are, hey, you can order for me. I've got 3 planes or 20 or whatever it is. But, they're printing them out one at a time and putting them together and shipping them off. Nothing big like Gillows. But Gillows is like one of the last one. I think there was one other maker. I mean, now it seems like there's a couple more, Old School Model Works and Willy Nilly's. And I know there's more. Like, I know there's a lot more. So that's pretty exciting to me. And then of course
encouraging. Like this, it sounds like this hobby's going to stay here for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the other thing is, like, you build with foam, and we love it. But at a certain point, you want to try something more challenging, or maybe you're like, this might be done better this way. Let's try this balsa, see what it is. That's like the next step. So it's nice to know that it's not going to be harder to get, but it's going to be as easy to get as it always has been.
Right.
Which would be nice. And of course, it doesn't hurt that we ended out the year with your hobby isn't going to die in a burning trash fire from the FAA. It's we will accommodate you. You may not always like every piece of this, but we should be able to have a way to continue the hobby in a fashion that's at least manageable. Again, you can. Everybody's got their opinions, so you can enjoy it. You're welcome to share them with us if you want at our emails. aviationrcnoob@gmail.com or Matthew at aviationrcnoob.com or Joe at aviationrcnoob.com. Okay. Sorry. Joe usually takes that part. He does well with it. So I think he's probably like, don't do it again, Matt. Just don't. I'll take care of this one.
Yeah, and from just some bullet points then on the timeline as far as where the podcast's been and where it went, like because we've got here our notes. I just want to go over them real quick.
Yeah, please.
We initially launched the podcast on Podbean. We quickly moved through our free allocation on that, and so we moved over to Anchor. And some of that was the in between as well that I talked about earlier. But we're over on Anchor now. you started up the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
We got the website up and going, which we've talked about. We do want to get some more stuff going on with the website, at least more information on it. And
it's definitely in the looking forward section. One of the things I think we'll talk about is the website. Let's see. In February, we tried out the Discord, right, for the build party for Builderory last year. I think that was the first time we tried it out, and I was really surprised at how, like I said, like how refreshing. We've talked about how refreshing it was to kind of go, oh, cool, this is working. This is actually a lot of fun. We should do this more often.
Yeah.
And so it went pretty well, which was good.
Yeah, and I wasn't part of that build party just because I wasn't doing the Builderory stuff, but
right.
Then as we got going,
Exactly. Yeah, and then I'm glad you were able to help out because you understood Discord a heck of a lot better than I did at that time. I was like a little baby in Discord going, I don't know what's going on here. Please, somebody don't hurt me. Ooh, candy. Anyway, so then we picked up at the end of the summer, or at the beginning of summer, I think. And then we began to release regularly. We talked about, look, we're going to get back into this. Like, how do we make sure that, we provide something that people can enjoy regularly, is to be consistent. Let's see. And then we built Spitfires and flew them together during the summer.
And that was a lot of fun.
Oh man, that was, we'll talk about the highlights, but that's definitely one of them. So we did that, and we flew the old fogies together. And I realized, like, wow, flying with friends is so much better than flying by yourself at the field. Don't get me wrong, it's good, and I thoroughly enjoy it. But having a buddy out there to have fun flying around with is just so good.
Yeah.
Yep. We were able to get we had the Hangar RC was able to sponsor our show for a little bit with a discount code for you listeners, which was pretty neat. That was kind of an exciting time, and I'm looking forward to see what happens in the future. And then we launched our website, right, and we got individual emails. I don't know if that was more exciting, which was launching the website or getting individual emails. I don't know why either of them is. Like, I don't know. There's something about like feeling legit. Like, okay, we are legit. We've been putting out a podcast. We've been getting steady growing listeners, and look at a website.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now we're on the map. I don't know. That's what it felt like. Well, I think that kind of covers the way the hobby has changed over the last year, or not changed, or the way things have gone in the past year for the hobby, which pretty good, I think. But how's the hobby changed for you?
I mean, honestly, not a ton, because I got into this shortly before COVID really kicked off. Yeah, like I got into this in November period of 2019.
That's right. Yeah, it was right after your birthday.
Yeah. And so I got to do a little bit of building with the Delta and my glider, and got to fly a little bit with that, and then we were kind of launching this, and then COVID hit. So like there to my knowledge, there's not anybody flying in this area right here with me, so it's not like I was going out and flying with other people and I lost that. Like, nothing's not a whole lot really.
Yeah.
Through this year I've gained friendships. Our friendship has changed, but also through the community that's in our Discord. Like, there's guys there that I've come to know and know better over the last year, and met plenty of people there. So it's
almost like you're like, man, I wish we were like 20 minutes. We just go and hang out at the field forever. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And at one point of clarification, because I don't remember where I saw this, but I saw or heard mentioned somewhere that at least one or two people think that you and I live like right near each other. Like I think I got grouped into the Fayetteville statement.
No.
And no, so just
No,
just
you
for
live.
clarification,
Yeah, we're
the
hours
2.5
apart.
hours away. Yeah,
Yeah,
2.5 hours.
2.5
You're
hours.
up kind of almost central North Carolina, I think, up in
Yep.
Fayetteville, and I'm central South Carolina. So
Exactly.
it's a bit of a deal for us to get together periodically.
Yeah, and look, we're both living our own lives, and we got busy nonsense going on. I've got, my children are oftentimes busy most weekends because that's what happens with kids who are in grade school and middle school and all that stuff. Less of it because I guess in many senses, less of it from COVID. Because when the kids say, "Hey, can I do this?" I'm like, "Well, we can go take a hike," and they're like, "Eh." I'm like, "Really? Okay. Well, can we do this indoor activity that involves touching everything that everybody else just touched 2 seconds ago?" I'm like, no, let's not. Because, as we had talked, my mother had been in, she's coming on 80 years old. So I'm not looking to expose her to a bunch of stuff. No thanks. I like my mom. I'd like to keep her around for a little while. I don't want it to be that she goes from COVID. So anyway, that being said, yeah, so we get together. So the 2 hour mark though means that it's an easy, uh, it's a hard day trip, but possible and actually pretty enjoyable. And it's an easy overnight trip, and
Yeah.
it's an even more enjoyable weekend trip. And I think we've experienced each one of those, and they've all been good. So we'll, it's close enough where we do get together frequently enough where but it's like once a month or once every 2 months. It's not like I say, "Hey man, want to meet at the field?" and you're like, "Yeah, let's do it."
And if I guess a follow up on that, because some will know and some may not, but for anyone wondering, well, then how are we recording? Literally right now, I'm looking at Matthew on Discord, and he's looking at me, and there was some interesting things that went on, a learning curve that went on recording over Discord and how all that works. Because there's internet lag and such, so we had to be mindful not step on top of each other verbally, but it's that's how we do this.
Yeah, we record locally on Audacity, and we talk to each other via Discord.
Yeah. So then you end up sending me your files. In the past, I've been doing the editing. You send that stuff to me, but recently you've started doing some editing.
Yeah. Well, look, I had a good teacher. Joe took it a little bit to say, "Hey, here's some of the stuff." And surprisingly, if you use AutoCAD, most of the controls are very similar. So it was pretty easy for me to pick up because a lot of the navigation tools are similar. And I think that's probably the biggest difficulty with getting around. With like editing things, you need to be able to move around and zoom in and out and edit. So to be able to get into edit and get detailed and then go back out. And anyway, it's very similar to how in AutoCAD you have this drawing and it's massive and there's tons of stuff in there, but yet you need to get down to that bolt and the the 1 millimeter gap between this and that. Even though you're looking at a foot or 3 of stuff, like it's definitely it's interesting. So yeah, and I appreciate that we got a chance to get through that, and you gave me the pointers I think I needed to jump in, because I think if I were doing it on my own, it would have been a much steeper curve.
Yeah, and I guess that's not so much how the hobbies changed, but how our some of that background stuff has changed. But yeah, we meander a lot actually. Now that I think about it,
yeah. Well,
so sorry about that.
So how's it changed for me? At least what I've noticed is for the hobby. So people aren't doing events. I mean, some of them are happening still. Like there's still some events that happen, but most of the major events that happened have been canceled, and a lot of the little events have been canceled. So really, I think people are used to getting together and just sort of seeing what's going on, and they haven't been able to do that.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the reason why, I don't know, maybe why some of our build nights, there are a lot of people who really told us that this was something they didn't realize they were missing in the hobby. And I think it's just that getting together and seeing what's going on and seeing what people are doing, and just that talking about, hey, that's a cool plane. What is that? And when I'm at flight test, I see all sorts of, like, what I've been in the past. I see all sorts of crazy stuff. We're like, how'd you do that? What is that? What kind of tape are you using there? And you don't get that opportunity, except maybe at your local flying field, sort of. Um, so the build night kind of allows you to do that. Like, hey, what are you building over there? What is that gray thing, next to your plane? Oh, that's just this. And so it has
Right.
that similar feel. And I think that's something that nobody's been getting, because most of the events that kind of lead to uh, that hobby camaraderie have been missing this year. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah. Well, why don't we talk about some of our favorite planes, some of our favorite flying. Like, let's talk about how which ones are our favorite flying planes, which ones were our favorite builds, which planes were our favorite builds, and which planes gave us probably the best experience, like our
Okay.
favorite experience. You want to lead this off, or you want me to?
Um, I can. It's My list won't be as large as yours. It's pretty much going to include every plane I've built to this point. Because my building has been rather limited. Um, yeah, I've built the FT Delta, I've built the Spitfire, the Old Fogey, the Hangar RC Vulture, and then I early on was working on scratch building a glider, and actually later built the Simple Soar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so really, sort of out of that list, they've each had their highlights. The Delta was the first build, so that was kind of memorable because one, it was quick to knock out, and it was the first one that I was really flying. Yeah, I got to fly your Arrow, but that that was like my first plane,
Yeah.
and there were difficulties in that because in the flying of that because first time, it was windy that day we went out. We said, screw it, we're going to fly anyway.
That was such a mess.
And that's how that goes.
You know what my memory of that is? Part of what I
What's
love
that?
about that is the second the prop broke, you went, let's get another prop. You're like, that was really
Yep.
hard. Let's get another prop. We
And
raced
that
over to your car.
that was the point at which I had kind of figured out and learned that the props that I had in my kit that I had gotten, I guess they were regular props or props for a different motor size or shaft size, because I've got the motor I had was a quad motor, so
Right.
they need a different prop. I learned that you gotta pay attention to what prop you're buying.
Yeah, not all props are created equal.
Because I had to go in and remount the middle of the middle of the hub so that it could go over the motor shaft.
All right, so that was one of your highlights of experience. What are the other planes that gave you maybe your favorite experience?
I guess so far the favorite really has been the Spitfire.
Hmm.
I've just had a lot of fun with it, and that that plane has taken a beating. Had taken a beating. It broke in half, nosedived a couple times. You know, I'm trying to think. A lot of damage to the nose. Dirt. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. I did fly it into a tree, ripped the wing clean off of it. I forgot about that.
And then you kept at it.
Yep. And then ultimately, put it in a tree, and it rained, and
Yeah,
that one's gone.
that's okay. But it had
So,
quite the adventure along with you, for sure.
yeah, and so far it has been my favorite to fly, just because while I really enjoyed flying the Fogey, like the Spitfire was more get up and go and more acrobatic. I could do a few more things with it. Now the Fogey was a gentler one. It was basically what I learned on.
Yeah.
And that one was fun because it was just an easier, lazier flying style. Like just put it up there, hang out, have fun. I mean, I crashed it a number of times too,
Mm-hmm.
but it was good. Now, from a building perspective, I enjoyed building the scratch built glider because I didn't know what I was doing. I liked I like to have thought at the time I did. um, and it was that was sort of the enjoyment of trying to create something or trying to figure something
Mm-hmm.
out and go big as it were. And if it had flown more than one flight, it would have been big and nice.
I know, right? Yeah.
Well, more than two flights.
I can't wait for you to try a scratch build again, because I really saw you. You were so, I mean, so excited about, like, yes, and I saw it. I was like, I'm excited. This is gonna be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, definitely. I could see why that's one of your favorites there. What else?
Uh, I enjoyed building the vulture in that it was different because it was a skin build. Like that was a whole other avenue or method
Yeah,
because
a whole new
like as I was
process.
building it, yeah, there was a whole new process of delamination, putting on a new skin. There was a lot of learning that went on with that because
Mm-hmm.
humidity's a thing. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the worries of, oh man, like because it's so warped due to humidity changes in my house, like am I still gonna be able to build this thing proper? And in the end it did.
And what you
Um,
learned was, yeah, this has a lot of forgiveness, this
yeah.
building method. So, which
Hmm.
is pretty nice.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh man. Well, you hit on one of my favorites is the Spitfire with you. For a couple different reasons. The Spitfire was one of the first ones my kids, both of my children, got to fly, like fly on their own. We had tried out the buddy box system on that thing, and it's a great plane. Like, I don't know why I didn't build that thing so long ago. I would have been so much happier, I think. It's such a great flyer, and we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. But I think the experience I had with my children that day that we pulled out the buddy box, we got it working. They were being really patient with me trying to make sure that I had everything set, but they were part of the process. They were interested in making sure, okay, are these going the same same deflection? Are they close? What's going on?
Right.
Left, in, out, and we checked it, and they were part of that process. They seemed to be involved. And then, okay, you give it a try. And then they flew, and Quinn flew awesome. And it was a great new experience for both of us. He was testing my ability as a pilot to recover from a really bad angle or a really bad orientation. I was just like, oh, it's upside down and going into the woods, like, oh no. And as well as my other son, my younger son, he flew like it wasn't a big problem at all. Like, he's done this
Mm-hmm.
before. It's all good. Hey, Dad, I can go inverted. Check it out. And I'm like, that's really
Please don't do
dangerous because
that.
Daddy doesn't know how to recover from that very well. But we had a great time with that. And okay, so then add to that, we got it caught in a tree, recovered it, repaired it, and still flew it really well. You and I got so many chances to get together, and I think that was one of those planes that we knew that once we had the opportunity, we were going to have a good time flying those together.
Yeah.
And just that experience is so good. I mean, I really enjoyed being able to have that experience with you for this podcast together. Like, so it's already given me like two or three really great memories in this hobby. So it by hands down, it's the top. Um, the Vance Viking is another one of those that I really enjoyed the experience. It was the plane that pulled me out of that COVID, I guess I can't build anything funk. Like, I guess
Mm-hmm.
if I come up with an idea, it'll be pinned, I won't be able to make it. And I went, well, wait, I've got a projector and I've got a piece of foam and some ingenuity. I think I could put some together. And, later that day, or I think the next day, I had a model that was ready to go. And I was like, boy, I hope this flies. And I don't have a great track record of really getting the CG right. I don't know. It just not yet. Like I think I'm there. I think I'm close to the point where I can like usually hit it close now. But
Right.
for 2.5 years, that was not the answer even remotely. Um, there's a lot of planes that got tanked into the ground. Anyway, so uh, it was one of those planes I put together and I tossed it across the yard after getting it balanced out, and it flew so nice. It just flew so nice. And the little bit of flying I did before, it was also a new technique. I really hadn't done the sections butted up against each other except for maybe 2 other builds, and they really haven't done a lot of flying successfully either. So it didn't last long because I think I needed to put a little bit more bracing in the nose section, but it flew beautifully. And I have other people who built it who've proven that, oh yeah, this is awesome. They really enjoyed building it too. So that was a great experience. And it seems like it's brought me in connection to other people in the hobby. I think the grandson of the designer um, of the company that made the plane like reached out to me after seeing my video and was kind of like, "Hey, that's pretty cool." And I don't know, to me, that's like I don't know, a pat on the back, or I don't know what it is, but it made me feel good. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that plane. Like it was one of those planes I thought up and it came together just like I hoped, and it flew better than I expected. And it just, yeah, it's one that makes me happy. Um, and I think the last one of like my top experiences was the Luscombe Silver, which was kind of it was at the end of the what was it? The balsa to foam challenge that was
Okay.
going on at the very beginning, all this stuff. And I made it the day we launched the podcast, if I recall
Really?
right. Yeah, I think so. It was January 30th. When our I think that's when our first episode went out live, right?
Okay.
If it's not, I was like right there. And that day I took out like a bunch of planes and maidened it. But this one was special because it was a friend who had, we'd been talking on the forums forever. He even laser cut some kits for me, which is how I built this first Spitfire. Um, and it was a plane that his dad made him burnish or polish the chrome all over the plane like by hand, because you can't do it with a tool. It'll eat right through the chrome or whatever. And so he had to do this thing by hand, poor guy. So he showed me this plane. He said, "Hey, I can't design. I don't have time to design it and build it, but like if you get it together, like I will build it. I'm so excited. I would love to fly a model of this." And so I was able to take um the designs and really turn it into a plane I was proud of. And then I managed to get it to fly. It's a trainer plane, so it's pretty easy. But once of course, I made it on like the windiest day. You could literally wind's throwing it around the runway on the ground. And I'm just like, okay, when the wind dies down, like the old fogies when we started, like
Yep.
when it dies, when it dies down, I'll just gun it up and we'll get it in the air and then it should be okay, I hope. Um, but yeah, I got it up in the air and I'll tell you, it flies so fun. Like it's just a really good trainer. It's a good plane. And if I hadn't gotten the servos backwards, or I don't know what I think I put flaps and they ended up going up and not down.
Oh,
And so like the plane did a whole weird corkscrew thing, and yeah, it nosed into the dirt fast. And I was like, that sucks, because this was such a good plane. Um,
yeah.
Easy to repair. I'll get to it eventually, amongst the many things which we may talk about. But those were the good ones. Ones I love flying, the FT Arrow. The one I did, the Thunderbolt, that was the first skin I'd ever done, was the Thunderbolt design that Rasterize, I think, has on the forums. Built that arrow, and it's like the third arrow. I love the arrows. They're fun, they're fast, they're zippy. That skin design is really good for it's pleasing to look at. It looks professional when it's sitting on the ground, and it's really cool. But it's also great for orientation, because the blue Thunderbird is on the bottom and the other is white, and so you can tell what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Wings are easy to kind of lose orientation on. So that was a lot of fun. The HRC7, the Hangar RC7, and the Mini. have been when they're in the air and they're flying around. They're just a joy to fly. It was a lot of fun, and they're acrobatic and kind of dangerous. And I clearly took the danger to a point that I couldn't control, and that's my fault. But I had a lot of fun flying it, and one of those, ooh, I can't wait to get this in the air, kind of thing. And
Right.
that's a good thing. The FT Goblin, putting that on 6S and watching that scream across the sky for about a minute before the motor burnt, priceless. It was awesome. The Goblin was great, and then the F7F Tiger Cat. Yeah, twin engine, just fun. It's got plenty of power. It's looks great, and I was excited to always bring it out to the field and fly it, even when it crashed and whatnot. From I can't even remember what happened, but it's awesome. I just enjoyed it. Um, Builds, my favorite builds. I've talked a lot about the Viking. I haven't finished it because I haven't flown it. Um, but this is one of those ones where my idea came out exactly like I wanted, and it looks exactly in my mind. It looks so much like a scale replica. I'm really impressed with it, and it was one of those ones where I took some cues from some of the papercraft people and used that to with the flight test style builds, but yet more the master series where it's not like segmented, but it's more smooth. And
Right.
I'm just really pleased. I can't, it's almost going to be a hanger queen once I get it done. Once I figure out the back landing gear. The T-37 Dragon, I think it was the T-37 Cessna. Um, and that's the one that was pure papercraft. I just wanted to see, like, if I but just print it out big and cut it out and put it on some foam, will it fly? And it turns out it flew, and it flew, you know, pretty well. A lot better than I expected it was going to, considering it was incredibly heavy for the size of the craft. So that
Yeah.
was a lot of fun to put together and see turn into something that I could be excited to have around the house and to fly with. So yeah, those were it. Like I built a lot of planes, and I know I'm missing a bunch more that I've either repaired and flew or put together and flew. But
But if we covered
there's
all your planes, we'd be here for a week.
That's true. We don't need that. So let's move on then. Let's start talking about uh us and I guess the podcast experience
Okay.
and maybe our take or our thoughts on it. Let me start with you, and we're probably going to go back and forth with the same questions, I think. Um, what did you expect when you started this from the podcast uh and the hobby, I guess, for you?
I I expected from the hobby to, I guess, be able to jump in, grab the controller, build something, get in the air, and immediately be flying. Like that, I kind of stated as much in our first episode or two that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would build something, I'm going to fly it, it's going to be great, I'm going to be awesome at it. And I also expected to be building a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I've not built remotely as much as I originally wanted to, and that's on me. You know,
Well, the question
um,
is, I guess, are you a little disappointed in that? Are you okay with it now that you've got a chance to build things? Now you know what the process really is. Are you okay with where it's at, or are you like, I'd like to build more, but I also recognize like this hobby is just that. It's one of the hobbies I have.
it's one of the hobbies I have. I wish that I built more because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately I would fly more and have a bigger selection to fly.
Yeah.
I've realized I enjoy the flying part of the hobby much more than the building part of the hobby. Not that I don't enjoy building.
Right.
I just never end up I don't set the time aside on a regular basis to sit down and build, um,
Sure.
like I should. So there's
Well,
that.
well,
Um,
piggybacking on that, before we go a little bit further, what kind of planes? Because you enjoy the flying, what kind of planes do you think you want to have? in your work? You said you're like, I don't have a lot, and I don't have a big selection. What kind of selection do you feel like you're missing, or that you'd like to have? In the this
Uh,
kind of leads into in the future.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna want to build, I think, more warbirds,
Okay.
in similar, designs. It's I've enjoyed the Fogey as a trainer. I wouldn't mind having one or two more, designs that I try out when maybe I park the Fogey for a while and build something else. But
Mm-hmm.
the Spitfire and still working on the Corsair, like, I feel like that's going to be the real enjoyment for
Mm-hmm.
me there.
Nice.
I've tried the gliding. I ain't gotten that to work. Need to
Oh,
try again, but
okay.
so far,
Well, I'm making notes. Things to do this
yeah.
year. Go ahead.
um,
What about the
and then I
podcast
get
then? Oh, sorry. I thought you were done. I'm mistaken.
no, you're fine. I was working on moving there. Um, really didn't have a whole lot of expectations rolling into the podcast because I imagine, and you can agree or disagree on me, but I think we both rolled into this thinking, well, we're just gonna have fun with this and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And our ultimate thing was, so long as a couple people are enjoying it and getting something out of it, we want to continue doing it.
Yeah.
It's been a lot more work than maybe I thought I was signing up for.
Hold on. What was? Do you remember the sales pitch? And I wasn't being devious or dishonest with it. I genuinely felt this way at the time. I thought this was what it was going to be. Well, what do you remember? What
No,
I told you? What kind of time
no.
commitment I was suggesting that we'd probably have?
Yeah, you were probably quoting me 2 hours a week.
I think it was something
Yeah.
like that. Looking back
it's
on it, I feel like, oh, I'm so sorry, Joe.
I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. No, of course. Like, we've talked about it, and obviously, if we didn't want to spend this kind of time, or didn't need to, we'd adjust either how we're doing this or if we're doing it at all. But I think so far so good. Yeah, I want to apologize now, you know, on behalf of my more naive self a year ago. I'm so sorry, Joe. This was a lot more effort. I think there's more time and effort in, but some of that was learning curve. I know we've kind of honed in some of the process where we're not taking as long as we used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's in the beginning. I made a lot of extra work for myself that didn't necessarily need to be there. But
sorry, Rachel.
we've whittled it down now, and you're taking some of the workload, so that's been nice.
Yeah, we've been sharing. I think we've been sharing the workload a little bit better. When what I didn't know, and this is my thing, what I expected from the podcast was we would record it, we would slap a front end and a back end, maybe pull out any curses that came through or something like that, like the cats meowing in the microphone or something like that, or dogs barking. We take those out, and then that would be it. We'd release it, and that's my vision. That's what I thought. Like, oh, this is all it'll be. What I didn't. So Joe and I know each other from playing role playing games, but I don't think either of us really knew how we work. Right? I don't know. Like, I didn't know Joe's his work ethic or anything like that. I just knew when we get together, we have a lot of fun, and that's all we. I mean, we shoot the snot on the porch, and it'd be a great time. Um, and I don't think you knew how I work or anything like that. And I think it turned out what surprised me is, one, you love audio, which at first I was like, yes, this is great, and then I'm like, oh gosh, we're really getting into depth about this audio thing, and I just wanted to put a front end and a back. Why are we dealing with all this other stuff? But I think what I've learned over this last year is that we are a really good complement to each other, and that I tackle things one way, you tackle them the other. We both have a lot of joy and passion for what we're doing. And I think you help me pull away from my bad habits, and I help you not dive into some of your bad habits. And I think between the both of us, we end up doing better together. I'm hoping, I'm crossing the fingers that that's how you feel too. But uh, yeah, I think, I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect you. I thought the audio, we'd both be like in the dark trying to figure out what to
Yeah.
do. And you're like, oh yeah, I run the soundboard for my church. Like, oh. And then you start going for the next hour into specifics about curves and stuff.
And you're like, I don't know if I should be paying attention or just telling to shut up.
Like, cool. All right. I'm like, you know what? This is good. So, and it has been. Uh,
Yeah.
but that was one of the biggest things I learned is that I think, that we work differently. I'm sure you probably, you know, we work differently than I knew, at the time. And I think I've learned that we work better as a team than I think if either of us had just started up a podcast and went at it.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm kind of glad we have that yin and yang for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And there's still the student mentor relationship there too.
right.
Like
I expected I'd be more of a mentor in which, God forbid, part of the piloting aspect. I really didn't know you had years worth of flight
not that
time.
much.
Well, okay. So many hours in the flight simulators.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know you knew more or less how to fly. Like you had the concepts down. All it really has been translating, okay, how is what I learned in the simulator for larger planes translating to the RC? Which, I mean, that's a learning curve. But I'll tell you what, your piloting learning curve was way shorter than mine. I'm a little jealous. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I'm glad that's the case then.
Me too.
Because honestly, the thing that I've learned the most from in doing this podcast has been humility. Which is to say, yeah, on the front end, remember when we were doing our introductions episode, I was like, yeah, I've got all these hours of sim time and all this, like I've been up in the plane,
Yeah.
I've flown a couple, under supervision, and I've never landed. Did an assisted landing, got to have my hands on the control. But yeah, I've got all this experience, and then for the first long while, he's like, so Joe, what'd you fly? Well, I flew this and I crashed it, or I tried to fly this and I crashed it, or yeah, I flew this, lost signal and broke my plane in half, or that tree came out of nowhere and ripped my wing clean off. Right. It was a very. It'd be one thing if I was doing this, even if you and I were doing this, just as two friends, just ourselves doing it, having fun together. But then to also have to turn around and say, and put it out there, yeah, I did something stupid, or I'm not as good as I thought I was, and have that out there. But part of the process is, I have to own it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, you can easily just pretend like it didn't happen. It's just you. And I don't know, maybe that's what I was doing for a couple of years. No, I didn't mind owning up to the crashes. Partly is the flight test, the way they present their material and they present the hobby is that this is fun. You're going to crash. Enjoy it. Like it's just part of it. It's okay. And I kind of took that to heart because I know my personality is to just not be okay with it. Yeah, I'm thinking back to a couple horrific crashes. I'm thinking the Bloody Baron where the battery started smoking. Oh man.
Learn to put little globs of glue on the back of the screws there.
Yeah, no, 3 or 4 layers of foam board, but yes, exactly that kind of thing. So I guess what I want to know is what my learning curve, I would say, for being a comfortable pilot is, geez, I started 2017. It's been almost 4 years. So I would say a comfortable pilot has been like 3 years of like trying to get a plane to just stay in the air long enough to learn from it. And then now I can fly, like I've been able to recover the odd whatevers for when my son, and that was, mid-year. And I would even say, like, at the beginning of the year when we started this, I felt reasonably confident that like we I could help a little and making sure that we could have fun when we go out and do that. But it's been like a 2.5 to 3 year journey to get to that point. And
Right.
it's been a year, and I feel at this point, I feel confident in my flying skills to be able to put a plane in the air. That if it's close, I will be able to trim it out. I'll be able to fly it around and have mostly a pretty good time, and bring it in for some sort of landing. And probably 70% of the time is one I can put it back in the air from. You
Hmm.
know, I don't know about you. What would you say your learning curve has been?
Well, has been.
Well, you
I
seem like you're
mean,
pretty confident. Like at this point, you can put a plane in the air and fly it around and keep it flying, as long as it's not like something didn't go horribly wrong.
yeah, like it. The fogey was good for that because once I got that up in the air and feeling right, which I guess in all reality didn't take too long. And I was with you for the first flight or
Mhm.
two of it, so you were able to kind of mentor me and guide me through some of that. And then I got some solo time with it, and once, so I guess in that regard, that curve was steep. It was quick, I
Mhm.
guess. Relatively speaking, I didn't spend a long time trying to figure it out. Like it happened fairly quickly, but then there was still the dumb mistakes that I call them dumb because I know they're like what I do, and I'm like, oh, why did I do that?
Yeah, like I knew
You
better.
you get in an uncomfortable situation and immediately just pull the stick back and to the right, like this is gonna fix it, right? Like,
Yeah. No,
um,
no, no. I need to throw the goblin into the ground one more time. Yeah,
um,
I know you're feeling.
but now that I'm comfortable with that, in general, the scariest part really is a new plane. Like
Yeah.
launching it for the first time. Really hoping all the CG and everything's right, and I'm overly obsessive when it comes to. Well, I don't go down a checklist on pre-flight. I do check everything, and I'll check all my control surfaces multiple times that they're moving the right way.
Hmm.
And a maiden flight is very nerve-wracking for me still. You know,
If it helps, it doesn't really go away. You just accept that. Look, I've done the best I can. When you've gone through the checklist the X amount of times, you just go, well, at this point, I gotta put a throttle up and see if it flies.
yep,
There's no way
just
to do it from this point.
three-quarter throttle and let her rip. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Can you imagine the first when you flew the Fogey? I remember I was holding it, and you're like, "Okay, we're good," and I'm like, "No, more throttle," and you're like, "No, no, no, I should be fine." I'm like, "No, no, you need more." Can you imagine if you released it like the 30 or 40% throttle that you were on at the time? Fogey probably would have flown, but
Yeah,
um, most planes aren't gonna make that kind of throttle. Ugh.
yeah. No, the Spitfire I was throttling up to probably 80% before I was hand launching it. So
Did you think you're gonna make it the year?
I thought that I would have built more in this year, and certainly if I had
Okay.
built more, I'd have been flown more. But yeah, I figured I'd still be here. Um,
Okay.
I'm did you think we were going to keep the podcast going for a full year?
I was hoping. I was
Yeah.
very hopeful. I also came to the I've listened to a bunch of this and that, and I wasn't sure. Like, just because it's a podcast and it's two people, and we each have very separate lives that we're each doing different things, and I was a little worried to some degree, but I
Mm-hmm.
also knew you, Joe, that like when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And I know I'm very much the same way as best I can, and we communicate well. So I was like, okay, we'll be okay. Like as long as you don't get so frustrated with the hobby, you're like, forgot this, I'm out. Oh, or me for that matter. I mean, I'll tell you what, there have been days where I was just like, I think it's time to hang up the gloves, hang up the transmitter, and just put it all away.
Well, I mean, on that aspect, there's been a couple times that you've been the pick me up I needed to keep going.
Yeah.
Both with the hobby and the podcast, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's been a hand in hand, like pulling each other along.
Yeah, I think so. That's part of what I I do best, I think, in small teams kind of stuff. And I think that's partly why. Because you know what? Look, we're all human. And there's been some days where it's been rough, right? I mean, COVID doesn't help anything at all either. And then you get a kick, you hear some bad news about this or that, or you go out to the field and the plane you love so much just got stuck in the top of the tree or crashed into smithereens or whatever. And you're just like, oh, and you're just crushed. Or you're like me and just threw the plane into the ground until it was a pulp, not intentionally, but like, I can't believe I just kept going because I knew it'll be fine. It'll catch air and we'll have a good time. There's been a couple times where it's just like, wow, either mad at myself or mad at the time I have available, just kind of frustrated with that whole thing. Um, but there's also been times where when I come back from the field, like, forget this stuff, I kind of post the crash pictures and then I'd have somebody like you'd call me and be like, yo, man, that looks rough.
Gee, thanks.
Yeah, no, but you'd be laughing and be like, but dude, that looks like it was awesome. Like what happened? We'd be talking and people on our Discord server and EFD forums or wherever I post these kinds of things, they'll be like, dude, that's awesome. Or like, oh, that's a bummer, man. I'm sorry to hear, but like I hope it was a lot of fun to watch, whatever. And if I'm lucky, I had a video and they're all like, that was the best video. Like, you just kind of have to take joy out of the failure. And like we talked about, learn it from it as best you can,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's just crazy. I thought I was going to make it, but at the same point, I also knew that I've had moments along the way where I was going to hang it up. Like I think I was done. Maybe it's time to make an eBay, post and just say all must go. $200 to the bestseller. Take it.
Yeah.
You know.
And if we didn't have each other, to encourage and just pat each other on the back sometimes, be like, well, it happens. Yeah.
It's okay, bud. What you building next? It's usually what's next? Dude, that motor's free. You don't need it in there anymore. What are you gonna put it in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or it just needs a little tape and glue.
I've said
that's more of you.
I know. Yeah, it's true though. Oh man. All right, so let's talk about our favorite episodes. What is your favorite episode and why?
I would probably have to say our Flight Boxes episode. Because a lot of times, and it's the nature of the topics that we cover at times, like I don't end up having a whole lot to contribute. And in a lot of these, you're teaching me as much as, teaching our listeners. But Flight Boxes, because of what I was flying with, which was everything I was taking to the field, it ended up serving two purposes. One, that I got to be a little I got to be more involved with that, and I got to, here's, how I'm downsized, or here's what you should, you know, and it also, so that dynamic, I think, was there more in the main topic area, as opposed to, we talk on the front end, and then, it's largely me absorbing. I got to give on that one as well.
Yeah.
But it also served that I finally downsized my flight box and got it down to the necessities. The difficult part of which has been upkeeping it as I use stuff. I've ended up having to pull the batteries out and change the batteries in my transmitter since I put that box together, and now I don't have all my spare batteries.
Okay.
So it's remembering to go and get, to restock your box. And if I don't stay on top of that, then, I'm going to be without batteries at some point. But that it's probably that one for those reasons. I mean, I almost said motors, just because of the amount of research that went into it.
I was going to say, why that episode? Oh, good love of God.
That one was up there just because, like, I learned so much in the researching of it.
Yeah.
And then I know you had to do some research as well.
Man, that was a lot of research. I don't know. Those 2 episodes were so motors and ESCs were they were difficult.
Yeah,
they were difficult for sure, but they were rewarding too, because I feel like the research taught me something, and I'm hoping that that translated to teaching somebody who wanted to know more something that they could take away and use. So, but that's not my favorite episode. I understand now why you chose motors. But I chose,
box.
well, you chose flight, but I'm saying that you even selected motors at all as a runner up. But no, I think I'm selecting mine for a very similar reason to the one that you selected, Flightbox. I'm choosing the Flyaween episode, our 13th episode, for the very same reason, because I felt that we had a lot of fun putting it together. We were kind of thinking about ways we could make it something special and something interesting. There's a lot of humility and, like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this, and oh my gosh. And we had a lot of community involvement, a lot of listener kind of chime-ins, which was awesome. We just had a lot of fun, and we had a lot of back and forth, and it was a good time to put together. And I think that's part of the reason why that's my favorite. It's the same thing. That dynamic was able to kind of come through on episode 13.
Yeah.
And I like that too very much. So good.
Well, let me pose 3 quick questions to each of us. I say quick because I know we can run for a while, especially with these. But I'll ask you, and then once you're done, I'll go through mine. But what was your top moment or favorite moment of the last year? What was your worst? And then what's one thing you want to do next year or this year, 2021?
When we had our build nights, and I think it might have been the first one with the Hangar RC, and we had people from all over the place. We had people from Australia and in Europe, and I think Brian had stopped in or something, who's in Israel. And then we had people from all over the United States and Canada. And it was just this really fun conversation that we all were just having about this hobby that we love. And that we were able, like, it was to me a highlight for the podcast and for us to be able to kind of, I don't know, be an instrument for making that kind of thing happen. It really made me excited for it and for what we were doing. And it's one of the things I really love about what we're doing here is pulling people together in our love for RC.
Okay.
What about you? What was one of your top moments, or what was your top moment this year?
Probably the maidens, the various craft, and honestly, probably the Fogey, the first time he got into the air, was because you
Yeah.
had recorded some video of that, and it was just like, man, she's really up there. She's flying, not like that. The moment of finally having the success. Um,
Like a plane in the air under your control for
yeah,
a while.
yeah, because like while the Delta had some success, yeah, and it
Mm-hmm.
did a little bit, but I ended up putting it in a puddle, so it was gone, and I never had like a ton of success with it, and then the glider technically had some success, but not really because I shouldn't have flown it that day. It was just that was the first time that it was good, solid. I'm flying. I got this, and then proceeded to
Yeah.
botch the landing and bust the prop. But that's neither here nor there.
Oh, don't beat yourself up about that. Look, you're flying tiny wheels in a not clumpy grass field, but it was an overgrown grass field. This was when, let's say, nobody had mowed that, and for a
Yeah,
while the grass was pretty tall. Don't beat yourself up. Yeah, I was gonna say that it sounds to me like that first time that it wasn't flying by the seat of your pants, but truly controlling the aircraft in the way you wanted
yeah,
and not feeling out of control with it. We're at the edge of, oh my god, this is gonna crash. Good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be a good moment to choose for sure. I remember that. That's a good moment. Um, so what would you say would be your worst?
uh, probably when I crashed the Spitfire bad the first time. And it crashed into the fence and broke in half. And it wasn't even that. Um, it was the yeah, it was the terror of where it went down because I had lost it over a neighborhood and didn't realize until it dipped behind the trees after I lost signal that I realized, oh no. Um, that was a really bad day. From that point forward. um, it's yeah, that's probably the worst so far. What about yours?
I can say that one of the worst. There's been a couple times where I've wanted to quit after after having a crash that just kind of devastated me. Um, but thankfully, none of them are coming to mind in great detail. Probably the one that comes to mind is the Spitfire getting hung up in the tree
Hmm.
because it was a couple things. I was buddy boxing with my youngest. It was such a great flying plane, and here it is stuck up in this tree, and I was just so down in the dumps about like, but that was a good flying plane, and we were able to just fly as a family and all this stuff, and like I felt like all those hopes and dreams were dashed in a matter of minutes, and it was all my fault because I wasn't even like, oh shoot, I should have grabbed control of that a lot sooner, and I'm like, oh no, I let my son down, I let myself down, and and now not only that, but we're not able to even have any more fun you know? Oh, that was the
Yeah.
worst. Um, so yeah, that was a pretty low moment. That was one of the worst. Um, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I know
Okay.
there's more, but that's okay. That one qualifies pretty well.
Well, what is the one thing you want to do next year?
Boy, oh boy, that's a tough one. Um, let's see, it's a whole year. So I'm thinking I want to build out a balsa. It's time for me to do something new.
Okay.
I'm thinking I'm probably gonna get out the Turbinator and build that. Or the Lanes Plains Cuda. That is going to be a very fast pile of sticks. I feel like the Goblin gave me some confidence in how I can expect that plane to fly. And
Okay.
it's such a good looking craft. And there's going to be a whole lot of um, new methods, uh, a new look, a new way of building. I'm kind of excited to get to it and feeling I'm at that point where I think I can start doing that and get into it. Um, so I would have to say balsa building, although boy oh boy, I would love to get um the spruce goose in the air flying the way it's supposed to fly. all 8
Mm-hmm.
motors in full control and having a good old time with it.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah. I feel like that one's going to be that's going to happen soon. And the balsa build's probably like a further out like goal. So I'm going to go with the balsa. How about you?
Okay. I want to get my Turnigy and my Radio Master communicating and teach my dad to fly. He's expressed interest in doing it. And like I know, okay, that's like a year to give myself that window, but you know, there's going to be some learning that occurs. And ultimately if he learns it and has fun with it, like my mom may come out, maybe I'll get my sister out, like that's sort of a whole package in my mind. It's like getting all of them to be able to come out and fly without me once I figure out how buddy boxing ultimately works without, like I'll still be there, on the buddy box for a lot of it, but let them fly and have fun with it. And I could see potentially not having to have them on the buddy box. And that would be it's a lofty goal, but that'd be fun.
I think that's pretty fair. I haven't even thought about it, but that is definitely one of the goals I have for next year too, is to share that love that I have of this hobby with my family. I would love to have my children be proficient enough with flying so that I'm not on the buddy box.
You're flying with them.
I can fly with them, and that we could be doing dog fights and all that kind of stuff, because they seem to enjoy it, but I think they'll enjoy it more when we're all doing it together. And we're like, did you see that? And kind of doing a bunch of that kind of thing. So yeah, I love it. I want to see that for you next year for sure.
Okay. Well, working on coming towards the end of all this, we had sent out the call for if anybody had questions they wanted to ask us in relation to this episode, and we did get a couple. Chris, I think, asked us in Discord, asked you in Discord. Okay.
Yeah, well, he had asked, he says, where do we see ourselves in the hobby about a year from now? And then as a follow-up, will we transition from foam board to other mediums, or will we likely to be staying with foam board?
I'll go ahead and go first, and then like I know you answered part of that, but will I transition from foam board to another medium? I want to eventually, probably not this year.
Okay.
Maybe once you get into it and get feeling confident, then yeah, but probably not for me this year. Where do I see myself in the hobby in a year? I'd like to have 4 or 5 planes hanging from my ceiling that I could grab 2 or 3 at any given moment and pull them down and throw them in the back of the car and go flying.
Nice. I like that.
And it's kind of an easy goal there, but I mean, as often as we gotta crash and tear them up.
Yeah, but to do that, you have to be confident enough with your flying and your skills at building that as long as you're not doing too much hot dog maneuvers, or at least you're doing them smartly, which is way up, far enough up in the air that you can recover, and that you can bring home your thing and or repair it between flying sessions. That's a pretty good goal. It just says, I'm going to have 4 planes that I can rely upon. And you know what? For the last about 2-3 months, I feel like I've had that with that triumvirate, the Goblin, the F7F Tiger Cat, and the Spitfire. Like I've been able to pull those out and just go flying with them at almost any point in the last year. Now, don't be wrong, I've crashed them and I've had to repair them and this and that, but they've always kind of been there to just go grab and go, which has been really, really awesome, honestly. So I think that's a great goal to have. I like it. Where do I see myself in the hobby for next year? Probably building some balsa And likely, if I'm doing balsa, I'm probably going to start doing stuff where I'm doing fiberglassing, which may include carbon fiberglassing, which
Okay.
will bring in a whole new different level. So we'll see. But I'm certain I am not going to stop using foam board. Like, I love the ease of which you can turn an idea into a flying reality. With foam board, it just is so quick and easy. So I will likely be still deep in that. I'll just likely take the things I really like and turn them into those high end. I'll call it high end, but like the fiberglass balsa, you know, kind of higher end production models.
Okay.
So I mean, I guess that kind of answers both questions, right?
Yeah.
Good.
So Jesse also sent in a question, and I'm just going to put this one to you. Let you.
Okay, I might have an answer.
He says, if I have a de Havilland Beaver flying north at 85 knots with a 24-degree, 10-mile-an-hour crosswind and a Piper J3 Cub flying south at 65 kilometers an hour with two Huskies as passengers, and they pass each other precisely at the autumnal equinox, how many math students' brains just stopped working?
Well, it depends. Like, so the autumnal equinox was September 22nd, 2020. I'm pretty sure that was a waning moon.
Okay.
But the answer is really easy. It's all but one, because probably only one of those was an RC enthusiast, and they don't really care. They just want to fly.
Fair enough.
No, that was a fun question. Thanks.
Yeah. And then Neil also wrote in with a couple questions. He asked, what inspired you to get into the RC aviation rather than any other hobby?
I think it's because I'd always seen it and couldn't afford to do it at the time as a kid. I mean, didn't have enough money for it. And finding a way to do it affordably finally made it accessible. So I think it's something I've always wanted to do. Is it just look like you were, not that you were doing the impossible, but you were doing something incredibly challenging. And it's like, okay, this is even possible. Like, anybody could try this. This is great. Yeah, I mean, we all have other hobbies too, but I think it's the challenge of the whole thing. And the almost not the danger, but the failure is inherently destructive, which makes the success even more sweet.
Yeah. For me, there's always been an enjoyment of airplanes and flying because I've been able to fly as a passenger, and then I've been able to fly hands on the control a couple times. So there's that enjoyment that comes from that. And then when you got into it and you started showing me like, hey, look at this thing I'm doing, and you had taken me out with you to show me, and you were talking about, and every time I went to your place, like, you had planes everywhere, and you were constantly tinkering and so then you ended up, hey Joe, I found this kit. No, yeah, let's do it. That was, I mean, there's nothing profound on that. Just had the opportunity, and
kicks butt. Aviation kicks butt. I don't know. Is there any other reason? I mean, come
on. Neil also asked, what objective do you hope to achieve in RC flying?
Oh, that's a good one. I want to be confident in what I'm flying. And being confident in flying nearly any style. So 3D or glider or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I just want to be able to go flying regular and have planes I'm comfortable flying and go out and have a good time with it. Largely, probably more scale flying. I don't know that I have a huge interest in getting into the crazy flying.
Okay.
I don't know that I've really got the knack for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that I do either.
And then his final question: do you have a favorite type of plane you prefer to fly? Gliders, fast jets, warbirds, trainers, scale planes, etc.
Okay. Well, I think I'm either fast planes or gliders. As odd as that is, I enjoy
That's two separate ends of that spectrum.
It is. I enjoy the seat of the pants flying, where it feels like any moment something might go terribly wrong, and that might be it'll be in the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same point, I also really enjoy just being able to take one, maybe two batteries, be out flying for hours, and just relaxing because there's very little that's terribly stressful with
Yeah.
gliding, and it is a challenge. There's a subtle it's a subtle challenge with that, and I think I enjoy that aspect too. So, what about you, Joe?
Um, I've only got a small selection of planes to really pull from so far, but so far, I've been enjoying the trainer style and the warbirds.
Mm-hmm.
That's about what I've got right now. I enjoy the way both of them fly. And there's two dynamics there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I can feel that because some days you want to fly one way. You're up for the more dangerous flying, and there's other days you just want to hang out in the air.
that's right. And both of them will do it.
Nice.
So, as part of that call out to for stuff for us to talk about this episode, the Hager RC, I think in a bit of you did it to me, do it to you guys, encouraged us to ask each other our own lightning round type questions.
Nice.
So, Matthew, lightning round time.
Okay, wait. All right, I'm ready.
All right. Sit or stand?
Stand.
Pinch or thumb?
Hybrid.
Okay. T16 or radio link?
Oh, T16.
Micro, park, or giant scale?
Probably giant scale. They fly better.
Do you have any giant scale?
I've got big stuff. Maybe not giant scale.
Okay.
Yet. I'm working on it.
Okay. FT Goblin, Spitfire, or Tiger?
Oh, that's such a hard one. That's so mean. I think Spitfire. Yeah, Spitfire.
Okay. Snow, water, pavement, or tall grass?
All the pavement that I fly off of tends to have a big fence at the end of it. So I wish I had more tall grass because I tend to maiden a lot of planes. So I'm going to say tall grass, even though I can't seem to find any of them that have a good flying zone. But I would go for tall grass.
Okay. Bacon or sausage?
Sausage.
Grits or cream of wheat?
Oh, man, I'm from the north. That's cream of wheat.
Build or fly?
Build.
Carolinas or North Carolina?
North Carolina.
Okay. 3-cell or 4-cell?
4-cell, you go faster.
Foam, balsa, or other material?
Right now, I'm going to go with foam.
Floyd or Led Zeppelin?
Floyd.
Okay. Landing gear or belly land?
If this were 6 months ago, I would have said belly land for sure. Now I'm saying landing gear.
Okay. Creamy or chunky?
Chunky. There's only one way.
And does it change if you add marshmallow fluff?
Oh, no, wait. No, it stays the same.
Okay.
It stays the same. Yeah.
Jif or Peter Pan?
Jif.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so let's get back into the lightning round with Joe. Okay, Joe, you ready?
All right, let's do it.
Sit or stand?
Stand.
Pinch your thumb.
Normally thumb, working on pinch.
Radio Master or 9X?
I assume you're talking about the Turnigy.
Your Turnigy 9X, yeah.
I have not flown the Radio Master yet, so Turnigy.
Micro, Park, or Giant scale?
Park's the only thing I've flown.
Fogey or Spitfire?
Spitfire.
Snow, water, pavement, or tall grass?
Tall grass, so long as it's dry.
Bacon or sausage?
Fatback. I
Ooh.
mean...
Nice. Going off script. Oh, okay, gray grits or cream of wheat?
Grits, I'm from the South.
Fair enough. It's only self-respecting Southern gentlemen would choose
That's
grits.
right.
Build or fly?
Fly.
Carolinas, South Carolina?
South Carolina.
All right.
Glad to know we agree we're separate.
Yeah, I guess so. 3-cell or 4-cell?
That one's tough.
Yeah, a lot harder than I thought too.
Yeah.
What's your first instinct?
4-cell, just because I like how the Spitfire flies better with it.
Oh yeah, it does. Foam, balsa, or other?
Foam's all I built with.
Iron Maiden or AC/DC?
AC/DC.
Landing gear or belly land?
Belly land. I've not had a functional piece of landing gear yet.
That's the exact reason why my answer would have been different 6 months ago. Okay. Creamy or chunky?
Creamy.
Does it change if you put marshmallows in it? With it?
I don't put marshmallows in it, period.
Oh, no fluff, huh?
No fluff.
Okay. Peter Pan or Jif?
It's peanut butter.
Good answers.
It's
done.
Peanut butter.
That's right. Good. Well, I guess that's the looking back. That's the lightning round. Let's do you want to take a minute to kind of talk about what we plan to do coming forward here in this next year?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, I think we had talked about we've spent this last year kind of going through the all the critical parts and pieces of the airplane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of a
and we still have one more part to go.
Yeah, we have a little bit to go, and we can, in every one of those, of course, we can probably delve into the minutia if we care to, and we may, but that's not our plan for this coming year. I think we're going to shift. How are we going to shift our format? I know we were talking about it. Do you remember? And I think this is part of it is because up until now, this has kind of been I'll call it the mentor-student relationship. But one of the things I think you and I both enjoy, especially considering our favorite episodes, is being able to have the dynamic of the back and forth. And part of that's one of the reasons why we want to shift our focus. What are we going to shift our focus to?
Well, we had talked, 2-3 weeks ago, sort of where we were going to be going. And one of the things on your original episode concept list was getting into the different types of planes. And so what we're thinking about right now is still continuing to talk about our flight stories and such, and then moving the main topics more towards individual aircraft. Say, take the Spitfire for an example, and talk about its development, its purpose as an actual aircraft, what its role was intended to be, the purpose it served, and sort of maybe get into the designs that went into it, the era it was in, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh wow, that's going to be a lot of things we're going to be learning, I think. Maybe not for you.
No. I only know a little bit about some of them, so
Yeah.
we'll. I think it's going to be a lot of research on both our parts as
Yeah.
we head into, because I kind of imagine the way we'll handle is like we'll either hand off or just one of us primarily is talking about the craft that we decide to, and then
Mm-hmm.
another episode the other guy is talking about
Right.
an aircraft they enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm with you. So we're probably going to have just like we'll talk about an aircraft type, and we'll see if we can't bring that together with us building one of those kind of aircraft that we can talk about while we talk about the history of a
Mm-hmm.
couple of those types of aircraft, and then we'll switch to the next type of aircraft. With that, we'll probably put together a build, and with any luck, we'll fly, and then we'll also talk about the histories in those coming episodes, and we'll kind of roll through the major types of aircraft, and give examples and talk about that kind of stuff. And I hope that that's going to be interesting to our listeners. I know there are a lot of people who are far bigger history buffs than I've ever thought about being. So for those of you who are going to be yelling at your podcast earbuds at us as we do our best to kind of put together um, meaningful information about the craft that we love flying. Um, just please give us a little bit of forgiveness. Um, and as we present the material, we are not professional history buffs, but I think we both learned that I guess understanding the background of the craft that we fly enriches the experience that we have as we zoom it around the park or in the field, as we have a lot of fun flying it remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean I think that's the bulk of what we're gonna do, and we'll kind of in the midst of it, if new ideas or things kind of pop up, we'll definitely be putting it in the midst of it. And if there is something you'd like to see, that you think you'd like to see us cover, let us know. Reach out to us. All right, and I think that brings us around to our announcements.
Yeah. So I talked to you, and we talked about it a little bit, and we're not going anywhere, but yeah, I've got some things coming up that are going to need some time. So Matthew, we talked, and we're going to take one episode cycle off.
Mm.
So 2 weeks from now, when the next episode would launch, there won't be one. We'll be back for the episode after that, and that's a little bit of downtime, some time to get some other things done, and just to recharge a little bit.
Yeah.
But in that time period, we've got a few build nights planned. So Matthew, you've got two Builduary build nights planned, and I say nights. One of them's in the daytime. You're planning on February 6th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then again on February 27th, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And
That's
then we'll
right.
be doing our regular hangout and build party on February 19th, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
That's it. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with Buildery is, that's a lot of planes to put together and get ready to fly and film and post and write and etc.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think when you mentioned, okay, we're not gonna, we'll take. How do you feel about taking a break? I wasn't ready to jump on it, but I also realized with scouts, I put together a whole, getting the scouts to put together foam board airplanes, and that takes a bunch of prep. So between Buildery and that, and other parts of life that are going on, I thought, maybe you're right. Let's take a quick break. But in the meantime, come out to any one of those or all, please, of these build nights and join us, and we'll talk about the hobby, and we'll all be building something, and we can just talk about what's been going on in the last couple months. So you don't have to miss us if you come out and visit us at one of these build nights. We'll be there and looking out for you. Otherwise, we'll see you in a month from now.
So, real quick for the final little bit here, Matthew, what do you have going on your workbench?
Most of the stuff is the Build-A-Roy projects. So I talked about designing the flying car, so I'll be putting that together. Griff Flyer, who's in our forums, has put together a really neat 50 millimeter EDF that's an F-22. It looks stunning. And I have a 50 millimeter EDF ready to be put in something. So I'm going to go build that as part of the Build-A-Roy. And then I have 2 of those kits that I was talking about earlier. So those will be on my workbench. Anything you're going to be adding in this last month that we're going to bring to Build-A-Roy, Joe?
Yeah, I've got the Corsair that I'm still working on.
That's right. Yeah.
And I've still got to get the Radio Master and my Turnigy communicating, so nice. That I can take those out buddy boxing.
Perfect.
So
good. All right. I think that's it.
All right. If you've got nothing else in,
just happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary.
Well, for any of those that want to join in on any of the build nights, a Discord invite link will be in the description. And we'll look forward to seeing y'all. And we'll see you guys soon.
See you then.